Welcome to the Crossview Commons, a brand new podcast focusing on the ministries, ministry partners, and the people of Crossview Church. My name is Mark Lanting, and it's my pleasure to share with you what God's doing in and through Crossview Church in DeKalb, Illinois. Today, it's my privilege to have Nate Kloster on with me. How are you, Nate?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. It's really a privilege to have you as one of our inaugural episode guests.
Well, thank you. And Mark, I want to thank you for just launching this avenue of technology to reach our county, and it's really could go around the world for that matter.
We'll see about that.
but really having the light bulb go on and the ideas here behind this, it's really exciting, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of this, and just thrilled that you're willing to take this initiative and go by faith and see where it leads.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you and the elder team for supporting this endeavor. It was an idea that came to mind as I was starting to end my time as an elder. I was reaching the end of a lengthy 6-year term, and we'll talk a lot about that in a little bit. But I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. It's called Doctrine and Devotion. It's a couple of pastors just out of St. Charles, Illinois. They have a pretty big following and a long-standing podcast, and they happen to have a guest on who talked exclusively about post-pandemic, how are you going to reach people? And he feels strongly one of the avenues we have to leverage is digital technologies. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty broad category, but it got me thinking, well, what can I do? What should I do? Where might there be a gap here at Crossview, mm-hmm. right? And one of the cool things at Crossview is there are lots of ways to plug in and
mm-hmm.
to exercise your gifts or to get involved where you have some enthusiasm. But it's also kind of a fun sandbox environment where we get to create, right?
Right.
We're small enough and lean enough where if you have an idea, we can present it. So I began by presenting the idea of a new Crossview podcast and maybe some video features down the road, just with a couple of close friends. Matt, our past worship leader,
mm-hmm.
he and I did a podcast together, so
right.
I was asking mm-hmm. him about that, and then floated it out to Abby, my wife, and eventually to you and
mm-hmm.
To Jeff. One of the things I've learned over time is, if you share something with your friends, your close friends and family, and if they have some reservations, well, listen to that. But if they give you a thumbs up, hey, go for it, right? Yeah. And I just got a real sense of green lights all along.
Yeah.
Till the point where you had me write out a full proposal and make sure that we presented it correctly and that it had some sort of bright lines.
Mm-hmm.
Should someone take it over in the future, we want to make sure it's the right kind of podcast.
Yeah.
But you guys blessed that proposal and blessed me with the ability to use God's money in
right.
order
mm-hmm.
to invest
mm-hmm.
in this nice little studio that we're still growing up. But I think it has a lot of potential, and I think it has the ability to reach some people within our spheres who otherwise might not be as connected to the church.
Right.
So that's the heart of it.
They can access it anytime.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So that's part of what the guy on the Doctrine and Devotion podcast was saying. It's like, you have to have your stuff available for when people want it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a different
when they're ready.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting used to that in some ways. It's not how we've always rolled. But hey, it's not for me to be interviewed today. It is a new podcast, so I'm excited about it. But I'm excited to have you here, Nate. And so I've known you for several years now. But can you just tell us a little bit about you, who you are, your family, what your profession, your background in the church? Just share with us who you are.
Yep. Well, thank you. And let me just, I guess I could start really, I was really fortunate to have grown up in a Christian home, came to know the Lord at a very young age. And so I really feel like the Lord has just led me in a path towards Him, whether it was through my college years. I plugged into InterVarsity when I was a student, a huge influence in my spiritual journey, particularly as I jumped out independently from my family and so forth. But helped me see who Jesus is, and that he's. It wasn't my small circle, and so forth, but opened my eyes to the larger body of Christ.
That's great.
And it was really a really pivotal time.
We'll take it.
Okay,
Yeah.
in my spiritual journey. But met my wife in college, Julie. We dated for 4 years and got married and. Began a family about 5 years after that, and we have 3 wonderful daughters who are now married.
All right.
And they have great husbands, wonderful son-in-laws. So I'm the youngest of 8
All
in
right.
my family I grew up in, and I tell my siblings that the reason they stopped at 8 is because they finally got what they were after. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But my mom would always say that she, with 7 boys and 1 girl, she basically said she got her girls with their shoes on, and with 3 daughters, I got my boys with their shoes on. So I'm playing the same card, and I'm delighted with my son-in-laws.
That's great. Now, have they at this point provided you with grandchildren? What's the status there?
Yeah, we're now have 3 granddaughters, so that female thing seems to be rampant in our family, but opposite from my growing up years. But we are now expecting 2 grandbaby boys.
All right.
So we're excited about that. One will hopefully enter the world in May, and the other one in July. So we're delighted.
Well, we're all coming off a tough few years,
right?
And so my wish for everyone, we're still pretty early in 2023. It's just an awesome 2023 with grandbabies,
That's right.
Weddings,
That's right.
parties, like
Lots
happiness,
to celebrate.
Right? Well, that's my hope. I know it doesn't always go that way, but I had a hard 2022.
Yeah.
So I actually love hearing about new babies and grandsons and just happy marriages in your family. That's really good.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we're just delighted they love the Lord and they're serving the Lord, and just blessed, incredibly blessed.
Awesome. Well, I've only been at Crossview, and comparatively, for 8 years. You've been here how long?
Yeah, it'll be about 23
years
years or so. Yeah,
that's a long time to be in a single church. That's great. So in my relatively shorter time of being here, I've seen you wear a variety of hats at the church. Can you just share about what your ministry involvements have been like for you and your family? What have you been doing here?
Yeah, so we came here. I'd say one of the main reasons we came to Crossview was for our kids to have a healthy place to grow spiritually, and a church that would kind of come alongside us as parents and help us raise our children in the Lord. We chose to have them go to public school because we wanted that light in the public school, so Crossview is very important in the various ministries here. At the time, it was the children's ministry and youth ministry, and that's still important. I thoroughly understand the need for that, and as parents, what that really means to everyone as a parent. It was incredibly important to us. But we let that be a place of, solitude's the wrong word, but it's basically, do you want us involved or do you not want us involved as parents? And we honored their request that was their world, and I think that that was just fine. So that means Julie and I plugged into other areas. We plugged in. Both had plugged into actually worship ministry early on as we got to Crossview, and I've stuck with it for a long time, all 23 years practically. So I love that aspect of what I've been involved with. But I've worn a finance director hat. I have an accounting background with professionally, so I felt I could use my skills there. Did that for a while. I also was involved in kind of being a small group coordinator, if you will, for a small group ministry, and for a few years I was an elder I did a 6-year term, and then I was off, and I got involved in other ministries. Oh, we started Sharpen. That was with Eric and Jody
Sharpen
Kampmeyer.
is our college
young adult
career.
ministry.
Right.
And that was exciting. That was fun. And again, it's one of these things that we've, as parents, we sort of just plugged in and supported ministries along the way as they aged. But when they went to college, that introduced us to this college crowd, and we just fell in love with these students. And we related, both Julie and I, having been involved in InterVarsity campus ministry, how important that is. And for those students to actually come to Crossview and have a church home while they're away from home was even a bigger step in their journey, and we wanted to support that. So
it's so neat how you went full circle, right? From having been blessed by InterVarsity and really connecting with the Lord through that in a lot of ways, right? The Lord reaching you, and then to be involved in that kind of ministry here at Crossview had to be really special.
Oh, incredibly special.
Yeah.
And then even rubbing shoulders, we've had the opportunity with some of the campus ministry directors to be here and attending Crossview, and just even talking with them, and on occasion coming alongside them on I know when we did it a couple times when, at the beginning of a semester, and they have new student outreach and so forth, just to plug in and
that's great.
Meet students. So
yeah. So Nate, I knew you a bit prior to being on the elder team together. You came on a few years ago, about halfway through my term, I think it was, and then we got to know each other a lot better,
right.
and found me to be one who shares fairly candidly. I wear my heart a little
It's
bit on my
good.
sleeve.
All good.
But I got to know you too, and always found you to be a great listener and just someone to talk to. So through your term as elder, you became the church chair as the previous chair was stepping off at the end of his term. Can you tell us a little bit about what that church chair role is, and how that functions, and how you serve the church in that role?
Yeah, so the term church chair might be, to be honest, I'm not sure whether that's a Crossview term, an EFCA term, but when I was when I was previously an elder, we decided to do some little bit of restructuring of the church, and in that process, this church chair role was named or whatever, so developed. So, and what that role is designed to do, or the objective is, one is to oversee the elder meetings. I'm kind of the point person to develop the agenda and keep us on track as we meet as elders. Certainly people might come to me and say, hey, elders, can you consider this? You came to the elders, you came to me. Would you consider this podcast idea?
Thing.
So those types of things. Often I'm the point person. It doesn't always mean I have to be, but it occurs that way. So anyway, I just coordinate the elder meetings. I'm not a voting elder. I'm there just to keep us talking and on track, and hopefully we're talking about the right things and so forth. And then we have congregational meetings throughout the year. I develop the agenda and sort of MC the evening.
Yeah, no pressure there, right?
Right. I had to bone up on the Robert's Rules of Order. I don't know. I often wondered who. I would have been a hard time being the child of Robert.
He had things down. He had a lot of order for sure.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how that would have been. But anyway, so how you run these meetings and so forth, a little bit new to me. But honestly, this is an awesome group of elders that I've worked with, and the body here at Crossview, our congregational meetings, I just love it that there are people who are truly heartfelt invested in Crossview, and what we do and how we do it. And yeah, we may not always see it the same way,
right.
But we come together, we talk about it, and we wrestle through it. And honestly, the majority of our congregational meetings are just fun. I mean, they really are. If you mentioned Matt Callio, who got you started on podcasts, he was a fan of our congregational meetings. So, Matt, I'll give you another plug if you happen to be listening to this at some point.
That's great. Nate, through our term that we shared on the elder team, there is a lot to do, and I will say candidly, we went through some hard times. It wasn't easy. Not because of bad things people were doing, but we went through a pandemic together,
right?
And other things. I wonder if you could just share what that was like, being a part of the team and then leading the team through the end of that season.
Yeah, it was a hard season for this church. It was a hard season for the elders. Every one of our elders just love this body and want to do what we think is best and how we can keep us together while we are apart. And so, as 2 years is a long time ago, but I remember going into the pandemic thinking it was going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we'll meet for Easter, and it just snowballed from there. But I think the body here understood what we were wrestling with and were amazingly flexible through that time. And we wrestled for hours at our meetings, figuring out how we can navigate this.
Over Zoom for much of the time.
So when we didn't have to wear masks, it was so delightful not to have to wrestle with that.
I was so glad to come back and meet with everyone in person.
Getting everybody back together. And so it was, it was a lot going on, not just the pandemic. It was an election year that was pretty rough. It was some racial unrest as well. And how are we going to deal with that as a body, as a church, and leadership? And
as I was saying, I'm pretty vocal about how I fall in certain issues, and I can attest to the unity of our church. That even though I might have been, maybe overly vocal at times, still the unity of this church, the unity that Christ causes in this church, really superseded a lot of that other noise, right? Between racial unrest, divisive election, pandemic. We did not agree on everything.
Right.
There were points where, one elder and another elder may have been very, very different, but the conversations were always respectful.
Right.
We always walked away saying, well, I feel differently, but I can live with whatever decision's made, and we'll move forward from there. I mean, I don't, maybe we are special. I don't want to say that we're special necessarily, but I think we're particularly blessed with the spirit of unity in this church, even though we've had our, butting of heads from time to time. Nothing's really been overwhelming in that regard. We've been able to, through God's grace, see things held together. I don't want to take credit. I'm saying God's at work here. Just wondering if you see similar things.
Yeah, I think there's no, there's a lot of biblical principles out there to follow, but a pandemic is not in that in that script in the Bible per se. So, you use the wisdom that the Lord has given us, and one of the things that I admire as I was an elder, and I still admire as church chairman, is when we gather together as elders, we can have heartfelt discussions, and I think there's a lot of value in having differences of opinion. I mean, and it being said, I just that's one of the things that I've just really appreciated is the transparency of the elders, and because I personally don't always think of something that way, and hearing that perspective, like, oh, I got to chew on that a little bit.
Sure.
And I think it's extremely healthy to have those types of discussions and that transparency, and I value it, even if the opinion is different than mine.
Sure.
It forces all of us to think a little differently from a different perspective, and we all bring that, perspectives, our history.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the beauties of our elder team is that we're different ages and stages in life. We come from different backgrounds, right?
Yep.
We might be of somewhat different political ilks, but that's good. That's healthy that we can have, someone on the right, someone on the left, someone in the center, but kind of talk through things.
Exactly.
And our politics haven't gotten in the way of moving forward the plan, right? Speaking of plans, one of the things that you oversee, we don't call it a strategic plan here at Crossview, but rather the ministry plan, right?
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the purpose and function of that ministry plan and how the teams are represented with goals and things like that?
Yeah. So every year around September, October, we ask our ministry teams to just take a step back and you sort of reflect back on the prior year, what you've done, what you've accomplished, and then look forward to the year ahead in terms of what you want to accomplish. Now, I could say the ideal scenario would be that maybe that the elders have this overarching set of goals, right? Mm-hmm. That we then say, hey, teams, how can we kind of come together and all be focused on the same thing? Mm-hmm. I can't say it's always worked perfectly that way, but what I am amazed at is when we end up bringing all of the various teams' plans together, we're all thinking quite a bit the same.
That's great.
And so it's amazing how the Lord has worked in this process, and I think it's a good exercise. And we don't know the future; things change, but let's just think through what we want to try to accomplish, and just start stepping through it together.
Right. So in the ministry plan are represented. We have a bunch of teams here.
Yes,
right?
we do.
Mm-hmm. I won't even try and name them all, but the idea of that plan is to unify all the different teams and their goals into one, document in this case, that we use to kind of guide and direct the year ahead, right?
Yeah. I mean, every team has kind of a unique role in helping Crossview be who we are in many respects, but it really doesn't matter what team you're on, whether it's technology, whether it's the missions, global missions, community connection, facilities team. We all have to kind of do our part to make this a warm, inviting, comfortable environment that reflects Christ and helps grow disciples. So it's interesting. All these pieces come together. We're a body of many parts, and so it all comes together, and it's amazing.
Yeah. One of the things that came clear to me after being on the elder team, I was immediately invited to be a part of the Global Connection team, in fact, directing that team. But you hear me using this word team relentlessly. We're really a church of teams in a lot of ways. Yeah. So we have a ton of people doing just a whole bunch of really good things church-wide. Right. With that, I think it's a tremendous blessing, but there are some implications for that too, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about some of the elder goals related to that, right? How you are addressing, keeping people from burning out, right? And, caring for people. Where are the elders heading? What are some of the goals that you have, and what are you working on?
Thank you. We, when we came out of the pandemic, and I feel like we've kind of come out of it. Yeah. Obviously, COVID is still around, and it will be for a while. But we're meeting back together, and we're trying to really figure out what that looks like, because we kind of changed culturally, and We have an online presence now of every service, and that's new to us.
Yeah.
And that's going to fall. We expect that to continue.
We were not an online church.
Not at all.
Prior
Period.
To this.
Yeah.
This is new, but it's not going away.
Right. So how do you help those people be connected? And then we have those that are here physically, and how can we, anyone that walks through the door, how can we help them have a sense of belonging and have an inviting atmosphere that reflects an attitude of devotion to Christ, and it engages them and it's encouraging to them in their relationship. So that doesn't happen with the elders. I mean, it's an elder goal, but that's everybody pitching in, everybody being relational and reaching out and caring for one another. Yeah. So it's a culture that we want to cultivate, and the term is community.
Yeah, right.
In essence, that's what I defined there. So we want to build community, and there's different ways of going about that, and everybody's an integral part of that. And so just building a culture of people that do feel a sense of belonging here. And so we're excited to see where that's going to take us. We got some ideas on that one that's in play that I won't elaborate on yet, but until it's further developed. But
sure.
But some other areas that we felt important, and most recently, I think the congregation has heard about the Deep Soul Care team, and about a year and a half ago now, maybe. Jeff is an awesome pastor. He's just an amazing fit for Crossview. He's great at the pulpit, and his sermons just, he seems to knock them out of the park every Sunday, honestly. But one of the other qualities that I really admire about Jeff is his shepherding heart for this body, and he just cares for the individual. It's not about the numbers walking in the door. It's the quality of relationship with Christ and that he's concerned about. And so in that, it's positives and negatives, because people feel cared for by Jeff, but it's overwhelming. And even particularly recently, with having been down the staff, his hands had been full. So the elders wanted to come alongside him and find a way that we could relieve some of that. And we have a responsibility as elders to care for this body.
Sure.
So we stepped out and began getting some training on counseling and so forth. We read books. We've seen video series. We've spent hours, many of us, as elders and elders' wives and so forth. And essentially what rose out of this was this Deep Soul Care team. And the whole objective there is to really come alongside and, acknowledge that people are grieving and have difficult experiences, and we just want to help them be listeners and help them work through those and flourish in Christ. And so that is coming to fruition. We've been working on that one for a while, but we hope that we can really be a support to Jeff and others in our congregation. We want one of the other ones here that has risen to the top is our desire to, coming again out of the pandemic and the change of who we are, and the culture seems to have shifted, not maybe significantly, but we want to take a step back now and really reevaluate our identity as Crossview. Who are we? And in that process, one of the things that we want to particularly focus on is the area of small groups, and how does that play into who we are as Crossview? How do we use this small group ministry going forward and so forth?
So we've mentioned a couple of things, the valuation of community and how important that is.
Right.
And we know that's part of what we're all about. But then, we're stretched with so many teams. We have so many people in so many places, right?
Right.
So I'm just wondering, what specific steps are the elders going to take in order to address, small groups and caring for those people who are on these teams and making sure we're not suffering burnout and things like that.
Right. Yep. Well, again, we're all in this together in terms of caring for the body and caring for one another, and so there's different avenues that we can provide care, and deep soul care being the newest one maybe, but we have the care team and we have the small group ministry.
Yeah.
And small groups is an interesting ministry because it's multifunctional, if you will, and because you're coming together and studying the Word, you're studying a book, but you're learning more about Christ and how to be a Christ follower, and but at the same time you're rubbing shoulders with your brothers and sisters in Christ and encouraging them and sharing stories, and it's just a perfect environment to really build community and grow together. So yeah, how do you manage that ministry again without overwhelming people, but yet have it be effective and so forth? And but we're going to take steps here. In fact, Jeff and I met with Marty Volz, who did our interim work a couple times, the sabbatical most recently, right? And one of the things that he mentioned as we were kind of wrapping up the summer with him is, and really kind of talking about small groups, talking about our identity a little bit. And he said, you need to think about whether you're a church with small groups or of small groups.
All right.
Because, and like I said, I've been here for over 20 years, and I don't know. I think small groups maybe started in 5 years after. Maybe it's been 15 years. I don't think
we've had some kind of fits and starts with small
groups.
Yeah,
it's ebbed and flowed, and it's always been led by a layperson, and and the coordination by a layperson, let alone all the leadership of each small group, is a layperson. So you're asking volunteers to invest a fair amount of time. So, but it's a vital ministry, and we recognize that, and we just want to explore it further and how that folds into who we are at Crossview.
Yeah.
And it's complex, and it's not something I can answer in a.
No, that's great. It's encouraging to know the elders are thinking about these things. They see that we're stretched pretty far, yet we still need that community as individuals, right? I remember one of my favorite times of a small group. You mentioned studying the Word, reading books. I like the food time, honestly.
Yeah, right.
Because I love all the other stuff too. Don't get me wrong, but usually you have a snack, sometimes a meal together. But it's where you get to know people,
exactly.
Right? And you get to know people's kids and what they're up to. It's real, like what second chapter of Acts kind of fellowship, right? Yeah,
yep.
right.
Yeah, and I found. All of the small groups I've been involved in, there's more reward. It's better to give than receive, but I think I received a lot more out of them than I've given. Really, I mean, even though I've contributed to the conversations, it just they are just a delightful way to really get to know other. Your brothers and sisters in Christ, and really identify with the struggles that they're dealing with. And it's not, it's the joys too. I mean, we're doing a lot of celebrating, so I don't want to act like it's a negative experience. Not. It's there really is a lot of testimonies as to what Christ brought me through, and how He worked, and so they're awesome times together.
All right, so. Where do you want to see Crossview in a year? And we'll wrap up.
Wow, that's a big question. I think as we just try to come back together and build community, so that is a big driver of what we want to see us do this year, and really some good bonding together. And it's not about really the numbers that come through the door as much as when you come through that door, come as you are, but don't stay as you are.
That's one of our kind of sticky language,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Right. So we want to see people coming. We're not as concerned about numbers, not that we ever were,
Right.
but the depth of community, the depth of relationship,
Yeah.
the depth of knowledge, and walk with Jesus, right?
Right. Yes.
That's a great place for us to wrap it up, Nate. I really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight, and thank you so much for being a part of one of our early podcasts.
Well, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's it for today. We want to thank you for joining us. If you want to get to know more about Crossview, come and have a look at crossviewefca.com. And our services are at 9 and 10:45 on Sundays. Come and join us. And we also live stream those services through the church website. So we hope to see you soon.